Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. It's your boy D Black coming back with another Raw review. Alright, Raw tonight actually wasn't too bad and stuff. I mean, it's still not a 10 or anything like that, don't get me wrong and stuff. But I'm just going to say it was pretty much mid. Um, so at least I stayed awake this episode of Raw. But anyway, alright, let's get started. We started out with Roman Reigns and the Bloodline, coming out to the ring. You know, the people are chanting, OTC, OTC, and stuff like that. And then when he gets in there, Roman says that, is he's blessed, or the men are blessed. The Usos and Jacob Fatu are blessed to be in the ring, with him. And then he goes on to say that, Jay won in the Jay advanced in the King of the Ring tournament to the semifinals and stuff, and then he wanted the people there in Baltimore to acknowledge him. And so they give him his props and stuff like that. And then the OTC goes on and says that people have been talking about him and everything, and how he's treating the members in the bloodline and stuff, saying that people are saying that his attention is more on Jay, and he's pushing Jay to go and win the King of the Ring, to go and challenge Cody, for his title and stuff. And he said that he's leaving Jimmy behind and stuff like that. And he said that's not true. He said Jimmy, was the catalyst of the bloodline, because Jimmy is the one that brought Jay in. And then he said Jimmy was responsible for him to be in there, and that Jimmy is the one that actually is responsible for the bloodline to be in the bloodline and stuff like that, and then give him the acknowledgement, to Jimmy, and then Roman asked the people, to acknowledge Jimmy, and they do, and they cheer for him a little bit, and then Jay gets on the mic and he's saying that, hey, look, Jacob isn't doing what he's supposed to be doing. He said Jacob, doesn't listen to him and stuff like that, and that Jacob should be the one to acknowledge him and Jimmy. And then Roman gets in Jacob's face and he says, to Jacob, that you don't listen or acknowledge, Jimmy and Jay. And then Jacob says, when it comes to Jimmy and Jay, hell no, he doesn't listen to them. Like that. He says the only person that he will listen to and acknowledge is his OTC, which is, Roman Reigns. And then Roman Reigns, says, good, because they don't need any yes men around them. And then he tells Jacob, a little bit about the bloodline, talking about the Wild Samoans, Wakishi, um, and everybody in the the family and stuff, has brought the bloodline to where they are and stuff, and everything. Right now, I just can't run through everybody's name right now because there's just so many of them and stuff. But I'll go, with Jacob, Akishi, um, the Wild Samoans, and stuff like that. That are there, the old people that were in the old WWF and everything that, brought it up through, where WWE is. And then Roman is saying that Jacob and his kids, will be tagged, maybe tag teaming together, and, and they're still going to be part of the bloodline, because the bloodline has always been there, and they are there today, and they will always be there as far as he's concerned, you know. And then Roman tells Jacob that he's, no more considered as an outsider, because people are looking or saying that, he's kind of an outsider. And then Roman goes ahead and just announces and says that you're no longer an outsider. You're now a part of the family. You're a part of the business, and you're a part of the bloodline. You know. And then he puts the an ulafala around Jacob's neck, and then they go and start to leave the ring. Everybody's leaving, and then you see Eric Andre, um, which is an actor, comedian, and stuff like that. He shakes Roman's hand, and then he goes to shake Jay's hand, and Jay walks right by him, and then Jimmy gets him a little dap, and then when Jacob goes by him, he taps Jacob on the shoulder, then he starts chuggling at the hula follow that Roman put around his neck, and and then Jacob just takes him completely out. I mean, he wiped Eric Andrew out. Eric Andre. I mean, yeah, he touched that Ulafala and it was over and stuff. And what's so crazy is that he frog splashes him, and then Roman gives him the order to do another one. And he frog splashes him again twice and stuff. Okay, so now we move on from that. Then we have the semi finals for the Queen of the Ring, which is Io Sky against Raquel Rodriguez. Thinking the match was okay. I mean, it wasn't too bad or anything like that. You know, um, it ends up with Io Sky doing over the moon saw, and she gets the win. I mean, there was really no interference basically in the match and stuff, so it was a clean win. And then you get backstage, Liv and Roxanne. They're talking and saying that Roxanne is saying that she's going to take out Charlotte Flair later on when she faces her, in a match because because Raquel lost her match and stuff like that. So she's just trying to show Liv, that she's still strong and can do, better than Raquel. So we'll see down at the end. And then we got Liv and Danhausen talking. For some reason, Liv wants Danhausen to do her a favor. He asks her for some real money and stuff like that. She leaves, I guess, to go get some. I guess stay tuned. We'll figure out what that is all about later. You know. And then you get a Seth Rollins film promo about Brock Lesnar, and they're talking about the match that they're going to be having at Night of Champions, which is going to be a cage match. And then you get Adam Pearce talking to LA Knight. LA Knight is complaining about losing the fatal four way, in the King of the Ring. Then LA Knight tells Adam, it's going so, I mean, he's saying that, he still thinks that Adam and Nick, favors, Roman Reigns, the OTC and stuff like that. And then he tells Adam if he's not going to do anything or do nothing about it, then he'll take care of things and he'll take care of the matter in his own way and stuff, and then walks off. And then you get a little segment with Jackie talking to Chad Gable, and Chad is saying that he's done a lot of stuff and he has to make up for a lot of bad things he's done in his past. You know, um, and stuff that he's gonna prove that he is a good person and stuff like that. Then he walks away, and as he walks away, he sees Austin Theory and Maxine Dupree, talking. He looks for a minute, and then he continues to walk out into the ring. Then we get the match with Chad Gable versus Rusev. The match was okay. I mean, there was Ethan Page that was out there with Rusev and stuff like that. So the match was okay. It was pretty good. It was a pretty decent match. Chad Gable did his thing. He's gonna suplex the hell out of anybody he gets in the ring with. I don't care who it is and stuff. Rusev, he did that thing. I mean, it was a pretty decent match, for what it was. You know, then Chad Gable eventually, gets an ankle lock, for the win. Then Ethan Page, he jumps in and he jumps on Chad Gable, and then Ethan Page and Russo start beating Chad Gable down. And then Rey Mysterio and Dragon Lee come out, to save Chad Gable and stuff. So, and then we get Jay complaining to Roman about Jacob not listening to them. And Roman tells him not to worry about all that and everything. There's other things, that they're gonna have and stuff like that. And then he goes on to saying that LA Knight, has been running his mouth and everything, going around talking about them and everything, and nobody has, done anything about it and stuff. And then he said, well, I should put the werewolf on them. And Jay said he'll take LA Knight out. And then Jimmy, comes in and says, no, let him talk to him and everything. So eventually Jimmy is going to be going out, trying to talk to LA Knight, I guess, try to make some sense to him or whatever the case may be. But anyway, and then we get the film promo, yeah, about from Braun Breaker, talking about Seth Rollins, and he's talking about what's going to happen and everything as far as him with the vision and all that stuff and everything, and that Seth Rollins is going to pay and whatever. But he's basically talking about the match, that they got for Night of Champions and stuff for the cage match. And then we get LA Knight going out to the ring. He's talking about his night at SmackDown, at the Fatal Four Way and stuff like that, and how he how he lost and stuff, and the consequences of how he lost. And he was saying that he knew. Well, actually, he said that before he gets there, he said that people were talking to him about coming there and stuff like that. I told him take some rest and everything, take some time off, but he said no, I got to get to Baltimore and stuff like that. And I guess the reason he's getting to Baltimore because Baltimore is his home place and stuff. And then he starts talking about the bloodline, saying that he knew that there was going to be some involvement, about the bloodline as far as letting Jay win the match and stuff like that, you know. And then Jimmy comes out, and he starts talking to him. He was saying that Solo is no part of the bloodline, that Solo's on his own. He's doing his own thing and stuff like that, you know. And that they have no part in what Solo did. And then LA is talking about he came out and he gave him the spike and everything. Because Solo and all of them are related, and I guess you can see kind of what he's saying, but we all know that the facts are different and stuff like that. And then he goes on and he tells Jimmy, well, if he's in the ring and he has a match with Solo, he starts beating Solo down. What is he going to do? And that's when Jay comes out, and Jay said, "You're not listening." He's telling him that Solo has nothing to do with them. Solo's no part of the bloodline and stuff like that. And he said he ain't out there. Jay is telling the LA Knight that he ain't out there, for no apology or anything like that. Then says that you know, he tells LA, that he's better than him, and he didn't need any help, to beat him as far as in the King of the Ring tournament and stuff. And then LA Knight is like, well, I beg to differ because he got that spike from Solo and stuff, And then Jimmy is saying that, for LA Knight, because he did beat him and stuff and did win and advance in King of the Ring, he told LA Knight, that he should acknowledge him. Then LA Knight, looks at him and then he looks at his finger. He has one finger out like he's gonna, acknowledge Jay and stuff. Then LA Knight says, I acknowledge you can kiss my ass. And then once he said that, it was on. They jumped him and stuff like that. Jay was trying to take him out, and then LA Knight kind of got on top of Jay, and then Jimmy kicks LA Knight in the face, and they kind of beat him down. Then Jay gets out and he gets a chair, and he comes in with the ring with the chair. But somehow LA Knight gets a chair, and he starts beating both Jimmy and Jay with the chair, and then out comes the werewolf, Jacob Fatu, and he puts him in the Tongan Death Grip and stuff, the Death Lock, and he takes LA Knight. He takes LA Knight out and stuff. And then you got Jimmy and Jay backstage. They're arguing with each other. And then Jacob comes out and he says, hey, you did it your way. It didn't work. He told Jay he did it his way and it didn't work. He told Jimmy he did it his way and it didn't work. And he says, so he took it up upon himself in his hand to do it the OTC way. And then he walks off. Then we get the match with Charlotte Flair and Roxanne Perez. The match is what you could have thought. If you're thinking the match was, then that's what the match was. I mean, Charlotte Flair is like 2.5 feet taller than Roxanne Perez and stuff. Roxanne tried to do her best, and all I can see right now is that Roxanne Perez is just the job of trying to make everybody look good. When she first got there, she was doing well. She even became a tag team champion, but now she's not winning anything. And Roxanne Perez is a pretty decent wrestler. I think so and stuff. But anyway, Charlotte gets the figure eight on her and taps Roxanne Perez out. Then we get Jay Evans, coming to the ring and stuff. He was going to talk about, because in the ring with Jackie, and she's asking him questions because he did advance in the King of the Ring, and she's asking him what's his next move as far as going to beat Jay Uso when they have their match for the semifinals going to the finals. And as he was getting ready to talk, then out comes Logan Paul. He's back, but he's not wrestling because his arm is still all messed up and everything. But then him and Austin Theory come out. They start talking crap. Telling Logan is saying to Devon, that he's has potential. He's a good talent and everything. He's tough. He's a killer. He's strong and all that stuff. And he said that he can't stay that way all the time. In order for him to be the person that he is, that he has to align himself with somebody. He said no other person that he should align himself with, is with the Vision. And Javon tells him, hell no, he's not going to join them. And then Logan Paul said, well, that's not, it wasn't an invitation, or request, you're going to do it and stuff. Basically saying that he has no way that he's going to do it. Then Austin Theory gets into his ears and stuff like that. And he tells him that, they're going to make him, be a part of the Vision. And Javon Evans said, no, no, no. Then he started taking his shorts off, clothes off, and then he gets in the dressing, wrestling gear because he had it on up under what he was wearing. And he said, hey, get a referee out, and they're getting ready to have a match. We got Javon Evans against Austin Theory. And actually the match was it was kind of okay. It wasn't really that bad. Devon Evans is a pretty high flyer and everything like that. Austin Theory is pretty tough in the ring. Yeah. So I guess it was pretty okay. And then Devon Evans got out of the ring at one time, and I'm like, well, if he runs out of the ring like he's running around to get Austin Theory, I'm thinking the Braun Breaker is going to come out, but he didn't. And so as they got in the ring, and then he was getting ready to charge at Austin Theory, then Braun Breaker comes out and he spears Javon Evans. Then they get the DQ and stuff. Javon Evans wins it because of the DQ. And then they start beating him down. And then out comes, Montez Ford. And then Montez Ford's ways back. And out comes Angelo Dawkins. So the Street Profits are back together again. And they go down in the ring and they take care of, the Street Profits. I mean, they take care of the Vision, Braun Breaker, and Austin Theory. Logan Paul can't get involved because of his arm and stuff like that. But Street Profits and Devon Evans stand strong. And then then you get the backstage segment. Roman asking Jacob, did he take care of LA Knight, and he says yes. That he did take care of LA Knight, and Roman tells him, if he stays the course, and understands him and everything, then there's no way that anybody can stop him and stuff. So he's building Jacob, something they're gonna build up to something. I know the bloodline, if it's anything like it was, back, during COVID and stuff, this time, they got the audience and stuff like that. Hopefully it'll be a good run. Looks like they're gonna try to get them to go back as a heel and stuff, but the fans love them and stuff. So we'll see how the support continues with that. Then you got Dom Mysterio against Oba Femi. I need say no more. Oba took him out, and it was a pretty good fashion. He beat Dom. Dom, tried to cheat his way in by grabbing the ring announcer's hammer and stuff like that. But it gave no, it didn't help him out of any. and stuff. Over picks him up, throws him, then puts him, in fall from grace, and you know what happens after that. Over wins. Over gets on the mic, saying that there's one match to go, till he's king of the ring. Then he says he's surprised that Brock Lesnar is not there because he thought, this would be the night, he would come. But as you saw, there's no Brock Lesnar, and I don't understand why, because we're getting closer, to Night of Champions, and you figure that if Ober's there, Brock should be somewhere around and stuff. But then Ober goes on saying, funny how it looks, how he looked up to Brock Lesnar, as a man, and now he wonders if he's a man at all. Then says, what is Brock Lesnar's legacy going to look like? You know, is he the, and then he goes on to say, is he the man that he says, that stays ducking, forever? Because he says he knows, who he is, over saying that he knows who he is and know what he will do, to be remembered by and stuff. Excuse me. And then Over says because people will remember him because, he's the ruler. He said he's the destroyer. He's the bringer of the war. The mountain that, you cannot climb. Then says he's the mountain you cannot conquer. And then he says he's the beast slayer. He said now, he's going to be and then he says that he's the future king of the ring. Then says that he is, that's who he is, and that's how the people, remember him by. Then says, what will Brock Lesnar will be remembered for? Then he says, when it's all over and done, and everything's finished, and he's the king of the ring, and Brock Lesnar will be the man who ran from over Femi. So he's saying that, Brock Lesnar is running from him. I don't know why Brock Lesnar is not there this evening and stuff. I mean, because it would have made more sense if Brock Lesnar is there and they had some kind of, talk altercation or whatever the case may be. But that's not what happened. But anyway, please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, leave a comment, let me know, hit that bell. Please subscribe. Give me a comment, let me know if you agree or disagree. Channel is pretty much still new and stuff, so down the line I will be getting better. But anyway, thank you for watching. God bless, deuces, and I'll see you on the next video. Thank you.